You're listening to Moviesucktastic.
Sounds like some bad movie.
And we're back, and now it's time for the movie challenges. I think it's my favorite part of the show, actually. If it's not my favorite part, it definitely is one of the parts I like the most.
Well, it's spawned from a reality where you and I have known each other for a long, long time now, and we're both movie nuts. We both love bad films, and you always have that one thing where it's, dude, you got to see this.
Oh yeah,
you got to see this.
Yeah.
It's like,
we have like this mutual respect for each other, where we can recommend bad films to each other because we know you got to see this movie. It's that fucking bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So.
I mean, and there's even sometimes where we'll hold off to watch a film together because I needed, when the Hitcher remake came out, I knew I needed a moral support, not moral, an emotional support.
Yeah, we waited a long time,
like a year.
Yeah, before we could get together because it would always come up. Do you want to watch the Hitcher? Not really.
Not ready for it.
So, so we'd end up watching something else.
I still have not seen the Wicker Man remake.
Neither have I.
Because I want to see it with you.
Yeah, that is our Hitcher of... Well, hopefully we'll get that done this year.
Yeah, so we'd always do that to each other. So the whole idea for the show is let's make sure, let's just turn it into a contest almost.
Yeah, and see who gets more pain from watching.
And for those of you who listen, the only rule is that any film that is challenged has to be seen by both the challenger and the challengee. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I challenged Joey. This is one of the few times where I challenged Joey to a film I had already seen, and he challenged me to a film he had already seen. So we didn't have to double up on it.
Right.
Like last challenge, I had challenged you to Heaven's Gate, and I had never seen it myself.
Right.
So I kind of screwed myself on that one.
Right. And I challenged you to RoboCop 3.
Which you had already seen.
I had already seen.
But I had always avoided because I knew it was bad.
Yep. So it's this one should be good though. Let's
start off with.
Want to start off with Looker?
No.
No.
I want to start off with Women in Love.
All right, let's do it.
Because I'm gonna have more fun talking about Looker.
This is true because
I want to end on a high note.
Women in Love is one of the most boring fucking films I've ever seen.
Well, okay.
It's based on a D.H. Lawrence book of the same title.
Correct.
And it's directed by Ken Russell, who went on to do other things such as Altered States, Lair of the White Worm, just to name a couple of like real tripped out type films. This is this is early in his career, and it's a complete deviation from that because it was one of the first things he ever did. He kind of got into the Lair of the White Worm and Altered States type stuff later on.
Right.
And I'm so glad he did because those are infinitely more interesting than this film, which is so dry and so boring.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Lair of the White Worm alone, if you purchase a copy of Monster Rally on Amazon.com or purchase it directly through the Moviesucktastic website or through my blog, my author site, smichaelwilson.com, Monster Rally has a chapter in which I wrote about Lair of the White Worm and deconstructed his whole... The religious allegories in the film and the symbolism, and there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yep. Good article, too.
Why, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And it's not because I know you.
Now, let me give you a little bit of a little more backstory on Women in Love. D.H. Lawrence at the time was kind of a controversial author because of the sexual content of the novels. The first film is, I have my notes here, hang on, it was The Rainbow. The first book was The Rainbow. Women in Love was a sequel to The Rainbow. Actually, they were supposed to be one book originally to get combined, but the publisher split it up into two. There was such a controversial response to The Rainbow that when they published Women in Love, it was available only to subscribers, like book club subscribers to the publisher.
Oh.
You couldn't buy it in bookstores. You had to just be a member of the club.
Oh, wow.
It was that kind of controversy where they just didn't want to risk any kind of more backlash for it. Russell eventually filmed an adaptation of The Rainbow, which is the first part of the series. I
didn't even know that.
Yeah, 20 years later, 1989, he went on and did the first film. So you got him a little ass backwards.
Wait a minute. When did he do Rainbow? What year?
89.
Okay, so he did... Okay, fine. He did Rainbow after he...
20
years after he did...
Yeah, so he did the second film first.
Gotcha.
So that's just a little backstory on that. And D.H. Lawrence at the time his books were big on eroticism and passion and how they were being diluted by the industrial complex and the industrialization of society. And he was kind of very... what's the word? See, here's the problem too. If anybody's listening to this is actually like a literature major, I'm probably bungling this a little bit because I've only done cursory research into this. But he was kind of against the progress of society, how modernization was kind of killing the feel of it, and he was a very philosophical author, and he would tend to ramble, and a lot of the stuff was personal views. There was the film has. I like to think of it as Sex and the City flapper style.
Yeah, that is definitely a good analogy of it.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Because there's a lot of talk about love and marriage.
There's a lot of that, and it's what I took away from the film was how it does delve into that. But I just couldn't get away from how dry and boring it was. Well, it just was. If you're very into like period pieces and you don't mind the dryness of a boring type film, you'll love this. And
it's turn of the century English literature.
Right. And
it's dry
and boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
By English, I mean British.
It is really, really boring.
Well, I mean, again, we're not the demographic. This is your quintessential chick flick, but more than a chick flick, it's an art house chick flick, or it's a legitimate theater chick flick.
Yeah.
So it's not only chickified, but it's snobified too.
Yeah.
And we're both intelligent people, but it's not the kind of thing I like to read.
Yeah, and it had Oliver Reed in it, who I like. I mean, I probably my favorite Oliver Reed role ever was probably Baron Munchausen, where
I love that movie.
We're all very large here. No, I just loved him in that, even though it wasn't a very large part. But when I think Oliver Reed, I think my childhood. I think Baron Munchausen.
Now this is a very well done film. I mean,
no, it's very beautifully filmed. The cinematography is gorgeous.
And there's also a lot of thematic qualities to the film. Like again, the opening scene takes place at a wedding,
right?
And while the two women that are going toward the wedding are discussing marriage and how it kind of signifies death. And the death of sex and how the kind of the problems with marriage, they're actually doing it in a graveyard. Like one of them is actually laying on a tombstone while they're talking about how marriage is kind of like the end of sex or the end of love, or it's not necessarily the ultimate version of it. I mean, D.H. Lawrence was not a very romantic person in that sense. He was like a rebel romance. Oliver Reed. I have a note in my notes. I just saw Oliver Reed's penis. I don't know how I feel about that. Actually, probably.
Well, you know what's interesting about that?
What?
He didn't want to do the scene. He was very.
Neither of them did because they
right.
And then one night they got drunk because they were both concerned about who was bigger.
Yeah. No.
So one night they got drunk and threw them out on the table, and decided, well, we're almost kind of the same. It's like the ultimate like male ego kind of thing,
right? Yeah, so they got up enough courage to do the scene, which, by the way,
we're skipping ahead
is one of the most homoerotic scenes.
Well, see, we're skipping ahead because I'm guarantee you most people listening have not seen the film, so they don't know what we're talking about. There's in the middle of the film there is a scene. By the way, this is one of the first mainstream theatrical films to have full frontal male nudity. So thank you, Ken Russell.
Yes,
there's a part of the middle film where the two characters. After Oliver Reed's sister drowns and dies, they're in the reading room or whatever, and they're kind of mourning. And the one way to really break out of a mourning after the death of a sibling is naked wrestling. So they decide to
They
wrestle
wanted
naked.
to do it like the Greeks.
And there's a whole homoerotic thing where it's the idea of like men trying to connect with each other and the physical contact,
Right.
and all that's lost because all I can do is spend the whole scene trying not to look at their penises. I'm secure in my manhood. I have no problem looking at a man's penis.
Sure.
But when it comes to a film like this, it's awkward for me.
It is very awkward. Full frontal male nudity has always been kind of like the most taboo thing. You could see full frontal on a female; it's not a big deal. Most people, even females, don't mind it. What they'd like to see, if you read any polls or statistics, they'd like to see more male full frontal stuff. But it's just, for whatever reason, it's just more taboo than the other.
Brokeback Mountain ain't got nothing on these guys.
You know what I'd like to do right now? I'd like to give the audience a bit of a taste of Woman in Love by letting them hear one of the scenes right now.
Well, there's one scene that sticks out in my head. They got to play real quick. It's one that's really stuck in my head, and I was like,
Right.
wow, okay. This is why you don't serve Alan Bates fruit at a dinner party.
Yo, with the...
Yeah.
Well, what was he eating? He was eating, it was a fig.
Go
All
ahead
right,
and
so
do that
that's
real
what I
quick.
want to do for the audience right now. I want you guys to, hear one of the most boring scenes in the film. So, here, take a listen to that.
The proper way to eat a fig in society is to split it in four, holding it by the stump, and open it, so that it is a glittering, rosy, moist, honeyed, heavy-petaled, four-petaled flower. Then you throw away the skin after you have taken off the blossom with your lips. But the vulgar way is just to put your mouth to the crack and take out the flesh in one bite. The fig is a very secretive fruit. The Italians vulgarly say it stands for the female part, the fig fruit, the fissure, the yoni. The wonderful, moist conductivity towards the center. Involved, interned. One small way of access only, and this close curtained from the light. Sap that smells strange on your fingers and that even goats won't taste it. And when the fig has kept her secret long enough, so it explodes. And you see through the fissure the scarlet. And the fig is finished. The year is over. That's how the fig dies, showing her crimson through the purple slit. Like a wound, the exposure of her secret on the open day. Like a prostitute, the bursten fig makes a show of her secret. That's how women die, too.
Yeah, I mean, this is you don't invite him to a dinner party and serve fruit, and then the whole scene, everyone's just staring at him like, you dick.
You sick man, you. That poor fig did nothing to you.
I mean, and actually, like the problem with the film too is like both male characters are kind of unlikable.
Very.
The one guy's a pompous ass, and the other guy's just kind of like a brutish thug.
Yeah.
Oliver Reed kind of pretty much
reminded me of the lead character in the film Bronson.
which
A little bit.
I have yet to see. Yeah.
Oh, you got to see that.
Oliver Reed, like
we got to talk about that.
It's almost like he's preparing for his role as the father in Tommy.
Oh,
What about the boy? Can we go naked wrestling?
he can't see or hear anyway.
Tommy, can you pin me?
Yeah, Tommy was only
I have another
4 or 5 years later.
Yeah, but like there's my alternate title for the film is Women in Love with Douchebags. Or Dances with Cattle. Because of that one scene where she's dancing with the cat. I mean, that's kind of scene where I think in the book it may work, but in the film I just don't understand what's going on. I kind of understand, but still, even though thematically I understand,
Right.
it's just no. And that's the problem with it. Like, again, it's one of the most. It's considered one of the best. It's on like the top list of like best 100 like English films of all time.
Yeah,
And well, again,
not
but
for
from
me.
a different angle. It's from a purely artistic and
Right.
thematic angle. Where okay, this film delves into so much, and it's such a faithful adaptation of a classic that it hits that list. But then when you get to modern day, a modern person, like a modern guy,
right.
we're watching this without the literary background or the desire of that kind of literary background.
And I have an open mind on everything that
No. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like we're saying, oh, there's women talking about sex and naked guys. We don't like this.
Well, you know what? I would have never watched it.
Yeah.
You know,
Me neither. But it's not a bad film.
I apologize.
It's not a bad film, but it's
Not
definitely
really.
not kind of the thing we want to watch.
No.
I mean,
But it's been sitting on my Netflix for months and months and
Why?
months. Because
Why
it
was this on your
because
Netflix
it was
list?
it was one of those films that I've always been told that I should watch.
By who?
Well, if you read it, like you just said, it's on top 100, best British, films, our adaptations or whatever it was you just said. It's always making some sort of a list. It's always, considered ahead of its time for the style of cinematography and acting, and it's always been the film that I've always read about. Oh, you should really watch this.
You know-
And, you want some culture, watch this. So I always had it on the list, and I've always avoided it. And then I finally got around to watching it on a lazy Saturday while I was at work.
I will criticize one part of the film in the first half hour when the douchebag number one,
Right.
Alan Bates' character,
Yeah.
he's taunting his lover at the time, and then she tries to bash his brains in with a paperweight.
Yeah.
The minute the violence starts, he suddenly switches into 70s Batman mode. All of a sudden the camera angles and he goes, pow, bang! And then after sustaining the severe concussion,
Right.
Alan Bates immediately runs out into a wheat field naked,
Yep. Yeah, that's fun.
which is about again, I understand the thematics. It's returning to nature. It's a passion, the natural.
Right.
But what it comes down to is, okay, now there's a naked guy rubbing weed on his face. I understand it, but it's still not entertaining.
Right.
To
No,
me.
It just... And you know what? I'll also add one of the reasons why I wanted to see it as well was because it was a Ken Russell film, and I wanted to see if it had any characteristics that Ken Russell has kind of put in a lot of his films. And because it was so early in his career, it didn't. So I think that is another reason why I wanted to see it as well. I kind of wanted to, take a gander at, what Ken Russell was doing before he really became
Take a
Ken
gander.
Russell.
Want a gander at it?
Yeah, sure.
Take a gaping gander.
Hey now.
Hey now. Yeah, when sustaining a head wound, immediately run naked through pine trees and rub yourself with wheat.
Yeah, it's always a
And
good
nothing
idea.
helps. Nothing helps the grieving process along more than a healthy round of homoerotic wrestling.
Oh yeah, with one of the best
Yeah.
roaring fires. I've tried to recreate that in my house, and
The naked wrestling? You didn't invite me
you,
over.
you don't want to do it, so
Oh.
I could never do it. So I've always just tried to recreate the fire,
Oh, okay.
and then just kind of thought about it.
Also, I did mention that was one of the first films to have full frontal male nudity.
Yes.
It's also one of the first films. It is the first film for a Best Actress Oscar for a role that had full frontal nudity.
Yes.
It was the first full frontal Oscar.
And the actress's name was
I didn't write down. I didn't.
so.
You're the name guy. You're supposed to tell me this stuff.
Well,
But I mean, it wasn't a bad movie.
which I thought her role was completely over the top. I mean, there was that one scene where the one woman accused her husband, which is I believe Oliver Reed, of not having an affair with Alan Bates, but kind of suspecting it.
Uh-huh.
And like she puts like a whole piece of toast in her mouth and goes, "No," just like, come on, you're really hamming it up for the camera right now. I mean, and I could understand back then maybe you getting an Oscar nom for that, but now you would just be considered silly and ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Back then, you might have got away with a little bit more because of the times. But she just puts jelly on the toast, and she just bites into it, and as she's biting into it, no! It's like, come on, really?
And then there's that scene before where she asked him why he's always going fishing.
You're dirty! You're dirty, Gertie!
Sir, I wish I could quit you.
But I cannot.
I'll admit, for the first half hour, I was actually digging the film. I was getting into it a bit because between the whole oral sex fruit dialogue, and then the whole scene where they're mocking his lover for her interpretive dance nonsense. It was actually kind of fun. It was moving at a steady pace. It was kind of engaging. I was enjoying it.
I don't think I was at any point.
No, I sometimes I like the more intellectual films to an extent, and for that part, I was actually digging it. But then it's got really slow, and then it got really bizarre, and then it got really annoying, and then it got really boring. Then it got really bizarre again for a bit, and then it got boring again. Mm-hmm. And you hated the ending.
Hated the ending. It was like Saturday afternoon special type ending.
I mean, it's not like Alan Bates ended up like going with the Na'vi. I mean, it wasn't.
It was awkward. It was abrupt.
But the whole film's awkward and abrupt. That's the whole thing.
But the ending was. It just was really out. It was like they didn't know how to end it, and they just abruptly ended it.
Well, I think they did know how to end it because they had a book to go off of.
I don't know how the book had ended. If it was that abrupt,
I'll admit when you
but all I know is, you know how we talk about how in a book or even comic, everything on the page doesn't always transcribe to film well. Sometimes you have to do things.
Right.
If that is exactly how the book ended, then you know what? It didn't transcribe the film the right way. It was too abrupt. It was too awkward.
I didn't hate it. I know it pissed you off. I know it angered you because when you told
bugged the shit out of me.
Because when you told me about the film and said you were challenging me, you said it's the worst ending ever. It's like I've seen worse endings. You know?
Just the look on her face.
You know, you remind me whenever I watch films with my parents.
Yeah.
And I always end up watching something like No Country for Old Men.
Oh, and then walk away.
And then the movie will end like that kind of ending.
Yeah.
And then I always I'll just hear my mother from this side of the room say, "That's how it ends." It's like, yeah, but I mean, it works for that. That's how it ends, you know. It's just,
right. Listen,
it's
we understand it's not Twister. You okay? Are you okay?
I was actually thinking of that while I was watching the movie. It was like halfway through, I was like, "This is not Twister." This is
why we do a podcast together.
This is not Twister.
This is exactly why we do that. Do you got anything else?
No, that's really the end of my notes.
Okay.
Rainbow, gay wrestling. Yeah, no, that's it.
All right. I mean, I think we've exhausted it.
Yeah, but I don't think it was a bad film. It just really wasn't meant for us.
No, I don't think it's
meant for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's very it's your more art house.
It was really meant for
like
for
The English Patient. The English Patient, considered one of the better films ever made out of England. What a boring, long-winded piece of crap that is.
Best Picture, 96.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's an Oscar picture, and it's not a bad film, but I can't sit through the damn thing.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't even remember what else was nominated that year, but I would have probably taken anything else over that.
You know what it is? There's a line, thankfully so. This is something that the Avatar people don't understand. Mm-hmm. So, and this is why, I'm not. That's why we're not going to say Women in Love sucked. It didn't suck. We just didn't like it. There's a line between the artistry of filmmaking and the business of filmmaking. Yes. The business of filmmaking is purely for entertainment. The artistry is of the craft and the form. Women in Love is the craft and the form of filmmaking.
Yes.
Avatar is the business of entertainment.
Yes.
Avatar was an entertaining film. It sucked. Women in Love was not, for us, an entertaining film. It is a work of art.
Yes, it is.
So you challenged me a film with a lot of male nudity. Yes. I in turn challenged you to a film with a lot of female nudity. I don't think that's fair. I think your next challenge to me should not be so opposite because it was unfair.
It wasn't on purpose.
I'm actually watching it, and every time I saw like Oliver Reed's penis flap to the left or right, I was like, all I could think was like, Joey's watching breasts right now.
Yeah, Susan Day, who I had a huge crush on when she was doing Partridge Family.
Really?
Oh, who doesn't love Susan Day? My God.